This is my first coverage of an assembly election in Meghalaya. My wife's cousin, whom she calls her brother, was killed by the Ulfa. But every part of the Northeast is so different from the rest. So Biswa Sarma has had a lot to do with that because he's become a national leader. But the people wanted to see Hemanta Biswa Sarma. Arnab and I, I've had a relationship up and down.
Hello and welcome to IndiaTodayNE. We are in Meghalaya and of course to cover the elections which are going to be held on February 27. But at the moment we would not discuss politics. We'll talk about Northeast. And to talk about Northeast, I have a very special guest who has a very soft corner for Northeast and who has actually invented a phrase for Northeast, tyranny of distance, the coverage of Northeast politics by mainstream media. And he is one of the stalwarts of mainstream media, celebrity journalist, and I'm very fortunate to be called his colleague, Rajdeep Sardesai. Welcome to India Today.
Thank you very much, Kaushik. First of all, let me tell you that it is because of people like you, I think that people like me have tried to bridge this tyranny of distance. What I have always maintained is that parts of the Northeast have often lost out because we haven't been able to bridge the distance between Delhi and an Imphal, or Delhi and a Shillong, or a Delhi and a Guwahati. And I think it's only in recent times that is changing. And to be honest, I will give credit to journalists like you from the Northeast who are in the national media. And I will also give some credit, I must confess, to Mr. Modi. Because ever since the BJP has become this force in the Northeast, they are fighting the Northeast elections also like national elections. Today Amit Shah was in Tura, the Prime Minister is coming here next week. And therefore, the interest levels naturally increase. You're looking at the way they fought Tripura. And I think that's what is bringing people like me to, cover elections here. I haven't covered a Tripura election. It was my first visit. I came here many years ago with PA Sangma to Tura. But again, this is my first coverage of an assembly election in Meghalaya. So I guess, life is changing. And also platforms like India Today Any make a difference because I think people are learning much more about the Northeast now than ever before.
For all the trolls, look, Rajdeep gives due credit when it is due.
No, look, actually, one of the things, while I mentioned this tyranny of distance, I remember when I was in another channel, CNN IBN, at that time, out of the, I think, 9 years that I was there, for 5 or 6 of the years, we won the Ramnath Goenka Award for coverage of Northeast. So I believe the only way you can prove critics wrong is through your journalism and through coverage. We had a very good correspondent here. So I think, we need to cover the Northeast, not just at elections. Let's say floods take place in a Meghalaya or indeed in Assam. Do we cover them like we cover, let's say, even a drain pipe, which leads to some water logging in Delhi or Noida? I think all of that needs to change, but I think it is. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that because these 3 Northeast elections are together, Nagaland, Meghalaya and Tripura, a lot of attention is there. There's no other election at the moment. And therefore, a lot is being invested in actually understanding, what happens in these states because they're very complex. And that's why it's easier to understand from someone like you what exactly is happening. I'm the outsider. I'm just trying to learn. And I'm fascinated by the way elections play out here. The dark side, I think, is that it's very transactional. Every candidate seems to have a price. I almost think that there should be a Northeast auction of our MLAs. Look at this state, Kaushik. I think out of the 60 MLAs, between 2018 and 23, about 20 odd have switched sides. Tripura also in the past has been no different. And I think that somewhere undermines democracy when MLAs are available to the highest bidder. But also, it also reflects how candidates are stronger than parties at times. People get elected irrespective of which party they belong to. And I think that gives them the confidence that they can switch sides. So, obviously, they have these local connects that enable them to win. And so there's a darker side to it. And there is also a message, perhaps, that if you're connected to your voter, it doesn't matter which party you're in, you'll win the election.
You started your career in 1988. I was just 10 years old. What was your first impression about Northeast?
I'm just trying to think, when is it that actually, because, I grew up in Mumbai, and when is it that the Northeast actually came on my imagination as a journalist? And, I can't recall when, you sort of looked at the Northeast as an area where, politics was being fought intensely. and it's actually, I would say, my first impressions of the Northeast were that it's far off. Honestly, I mean, through the 90s, for example, Kaushik, a lot of journalism focused on Kashmir because of the militancy there. But there were various militant movements here in the 70s, 80s, some Ulfa stretched into the 90s. And I don't think we spent enough time in the national media understanding what was happening in the Northeast. A few journalists did, but many did not. I actually have a very unfortunate way of remembering the Northeast. My wife's cousin, whom she calls her brother, was killed by the Ulfa, Sanjoy Ghosh. Turning point, as you will appreciate also, because a lot of anger against killing someone who was running a wonderful NGO in the Northeast. And I think that, in a way, sort of set the Ulfa back. Ulfa lost a lot of popular support. This happened in Majuli, of course. And therefore, that's one, I know my wife was very angry. And she was, felt that, she felt almost betrayed. But I've met wonderful people out here. And, I think you should never judge individuals by, the harsh actions, the excesses of militant groups. That's as true of Kashmir as it is about the Northeast. And I think the people of the Northeast for a long time, first of all, why call it the Northeast? There are, you have all these wonderful states.
Even Abhishek Banerjee today said that it should be called East.
Yeah, well, maybe that's his way as a Bengali, to look at the Northeast as the East. But, each state is so different to the other. I was in Tripura last week, and the politics is there, left versus right. And here you've got the politics which is almost pitting Garo versus Khasi versus Jantia, BJP coming in, Trinamool Congress really giving a fight by taking over the Congress vote. So each state is very different to the other. But we tend to treat it very similarly. And even the tribal vote in Tripura is very different to the tribal vote that you'll get here in Meghalaya. The Christian factor here will be unique to, here and possibly a Nagaland and a Mizoram maybe. But, every part of the Northeast is so different from the rest. So why is it that, we look at it as Northeast? Why don't we talk about Assam or Meghalaya? And that, I think, is unfortunate. And, we do the same mistake with the South. I hear people say, south of the Vindhyas, almost as if, Karnataka, Telangana, all are supposed to have one identity. And I think all of that is changing. And I'm glad it's changing, because I think there is far more knowledge today than ever before. And I don't recall which other election in this part of the world has been covered by the national media with so many reporters here. I'm here, there's an Aaj Tak reporter coming, you're here in Meghalaya, unheard of. 10 or 15 years ago.
And we are talking about Northeast.
And and it's almost as if we are discovering the Northeast. And I recall, I used to have a colleague, Karma Paljor, who is from Sikkim. And he used to often tell me, we need to do much more about Sikkim. And, why aren't we covering enough about Sikkim? And he was right. We also looked at Sikkim as, just almost, as part of this larger Northeast, when the issues of Sikkim were very distinct. So I think all of that has changed in the last decade. I mentioned Mr. Modi because, where was the BJP here? I think the highest performance in Meghalaya is 3 seats. Three.
Yeah.
And once they got 3, now they are contesting all 60. In Tripura till 5 years ago, they were nowhere 1.5%. Now they are 45%, possibly will get re-elected.
Even in Assam.
And your chief minister, if I may call him that, Hemanta Biswa Sarma, has had a lot to do with that, because he's become a national leader. I was stunned, Kaushik, that when I was in Gujarat during the recent election, there was such a demand for Hemanto. We were going somewhere near Ahmedabad, and somebody told, "Arey, aap Hemanta Biswa Sarma bhi aa raha hai kya rally ke liye?" And there were other big, Ravi Shankar Prasad and others were coming, but people wanted to see Hemanta Biswa Sarma. So I think that also has made a difference, that you've got a strong man from the Northeast who's making an impression, positive and negative, depending on which side of the fence. He's a polarizing figure. But either way, he is a national figure today.
I didn't want to talk politics, but I'm tempted to ask you this question. Do you see in future, sooner or later, it will be a Yogi Adityanath versus Hemanta Biswa Sarma?
You don't know. There's Devendra Fadnavis, who may have a thing or two to say about it. Amit Shah, same age group really.
But in terms of the popularity that he's gaining,
Yeah, it's interesting. They are both catering to the same constituency. I think you have a point there. There's sort of much more hard Hindutva constituency. I still think that Yogi has an advantage in the sense that he's come through the Parivar. Some may still see Hemanto as an outsider, which means that sometimes Hemanto needs to work extra and say something even more dramatic at times. But look, I think he's an extremely a popular leader now among the BJP's constituency as well. So yes, I see him as a leader with a future within the in a rising BJP.
you mentioned about karma. You had worked with some of the northeastern journalists who have made their name. One is Arnab Goswami, Sandeep Fukan, Dibang. So, what are your memories about working with them?
I'll say first something controversial. Arnab and I, I've had a relationship up and down. We went once to see a World Cup final together in 2003, and we were great friends. And we, in a way, I think there's still a lot of mutual respect. It may not seem so, but there is. And he insisted when he was having his own house that he would not. He insisted I come there for the Griha Pravesh, and I sort of, in a way, be part of the puja. But all that is in the past. I remember telling Arnab once, and this was it was unfortunately misinterpreted because people only don't look at the context. There was a killing of Bodos in Bodoland 20 years ago, and Arnab came to me and said, this has happened. Shouldn't it be a big headline? I said, of course it should. But the tragedy of this country is that when things happen in Bodoland, you need a massive killing for people to actually recognize that something is happening. So it's almost as if 5 people are killed tragically in Jammu and Kashmir, it'll be a headline. But even if 20 people are killed in Bodoland, it won't. And that's what I was trying to say, that's the tragedy of it. People misinterpreted it to say, oh, you're equating Bodoland and Kashmir. I was not. I was trying to point out the tragedy of the fact that in some parts of the country, we in the news media don't take it up seriously unless it becomes really dramatic. And for us, what is dramatic? The bigger the story in terms of, what is the nature of the, what's happened on the ground. And I thought that was sad because every life should matter. It's again the same thing. When floods take place in Assam, we treat it as routine. When there's a sort of water logging in Delhi, it becomes breaking news right through the day. I think we need to change that. That was the order. Sandeep Fukan also, from your part of the world, Assam, excellent reporter who I had hired at NDTV. And now is with the Hindu, covers the Congress very well, great integrity. And Arojit Sen was someone who actually was based here in Guwahati, did some excellent reporting at the time in CNN IBN when I was there. Dibang, goes back to the 80s and Illustrated Weekly. I think he was the one who interviewed Charles Sobraj in the late 80s. So he actually precedes me. I think he joined journalism 1 or 2 years ahead of me. And he never seems to age. There's something about the people from Arunachal. Even Kiran Rejuju looks very young. Similarly, Dibang is probably a couple of years senior to me, but looks very young. And, that's the way it is. There is, and they speak very good Hindi. Dibang speaks, terrific Hindi. He was a Hindi anchor. Now, how many people would have thought that, someone from Arunachal would be a primetime anchor, which Dibang became, headed a news channel. So, yeah, I think, we need to celebrate more the achievements of people from your part of the world.
About politicians, I must ask you about politicians from Northeast. What are the differences? You cover almost all political parties and all politicians. Many of them personally very well. What are the differences that you have figured out? What is unique about Northeastern politicians?
Look, I think for a long time, Northeastern politicians, like many people from outside Delhi, came to Delhi with a slightly inferiority complex. Maybe because of language, maybe because of distance, maybe because, they were not sort of, there were how many? 2 MPs from Meghalaya, fewer MPs, so you don't have the kind of clout like an Uttar Pradesh or a Bihar MP would have. So they felt left out, and it resulted in an inferiority complex at times. You didn't get them on primetime news, even though many of them spoke very well. How many of them would you sort of showcase on your news channel? So I think they lost out for a long time. As I said, the likes of Hemanta have changed. Mr. Sangma, Purnyo Sangma changed a lot of it as Lok Sabha Speaker. He was a very articulate, very effective Lok Sabha Speaker. And I think he gave, today, even today, for many people outside Meghalaya is associated with Purno Sangma. And I was telling Conrad today, I interviewed Conrad, I said, you've actually taken your father's legacy forward. I remember Purno Sangma telling me over drinks, he loved his drink, would say that, I want to build a party for the Northeast. But he couldn't. He had to tie up once with NCP, originally with Nationalist Congress Party, then even Trinamool. But he was never able to build a party of his own in the manner that his son has. So actually, Conrad has taken Mr. Sangma's legacy forward. But Mr. Sangma was one of those politicians who gave the Northeast a kind of presence that was so sorely required in Delhi. Today, Hemanto is doing the same. And I think you need more of that. You need ambassadors for the Northeast who will take the issues of the Northeast to the rest of the country. My problem, is that don't make them only polarizing issues. Let's not make them only Hindu, Muslim or tribal versus non-tribal. Let's make them about development. And again, I'll come to this. You cannot deny the fact that one of the changes you see in the Northeast is infrastructure. I'm seeing genuinely change in infrastructure. Wherever you go, roads, bridges, much better than what they were. And, if you were to list the top 5 achievements of the Modi government, I think the focus on the Northeast would be one of them. You can't deny that. And that's why the BJP today is a contender in almost every part of the Northeast.
Mainstreaming Northeast.
Yeah, it's mainstreaming it. It's also very cleverly either taken over Congress votes or broken Congress parties or allied with regional parties and then try to take them over. Look at what is happening here in Meghalaya. You tie up with the National People's Party for 5 years and on the eve of elections break away, call them corrupt, call them incompetent and then want to take away their vote. So you see, they've played a strategic role here in the Northeast, mainstream themselves by using Northeast parties, taken over the Arunachal Congress, got in Biren Singh from the Congress into the BJP in Manipur, brought in Hemanto from the Congress. So the decline of the Congress in the Northeast is to the advantage of the BJP. I remember coming here many years ago and, the Congress was everywhere. Today I don't see the Congress. I mean, in a way, the Northeast reflects the decline of the Congress perhaps more starkly, almost as starkly as the Hindi heartland.
Now, food is very integral part of your election coverage. And you have tasted food in Northeast. You had been to Assam, Tripura, now Meghalaya. So, what's your favorite?
I had some fantastic hilsa in Tripura. And my mother-in-law is a Bengali and she cooks superb fish. And she admitted to me last week that actually the fish that comes to Tripura, the hilsa that comes to Tripura is better than what comes to Kolkata because it comes from the Padma to Tripura from Bangladesh. So hilsa was lovely. I had a great meal with Pradyut Dev Burman, a royal meal almost, sticky rice, pork. Pork is a very important part I find in these parts. In Meghalaya, I'm looking forward to some pork curry tomorrow. I think the magic of your land is that you have such a diversity of cuisine. You have great pork in Meghalaya. You'll have great fish in Tripura. The Assamese make also very good fish, and your Assamese thali that I once had is wonderful as well. So
Breakfast thali.
the breakfast thali you took me last time. So there's lots to there's lots to sort of admire about the diversity of the cuisine. I haven't traveled as extensively through Nagaland, and I'm told that Nagaland is the place to go also if you want to explore true non-veg food. So that's still on my plate.
Exactly. Now, this is a very Kapil Sharma style of question. When you started your career in 1988, did you ever imagine that one day you will work for a platform called IndiaTodayNE?
No, I didn't. And I'm so glad that, you've given me this opportunity. I was in Tripura. You all carried a lot of our coverage from there. And we've got very good reaction because it clearly means that the people of the Northeast are hankering for more news about the Northeast. But people outside the Northeast also want to know about the Northeast. And, that's wonderful. No, I didn't. I was a Mumbai boy. For me, coming to Delhi was about learning first about Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. I must confess, I spent 10 years regularly traveling to these two states because we thought that's where politics plays out. So now as I'm getting older, I'm discovering newer parts, and coming to the Northeast is part of that.
So my last question, do you think that there is a possibility someday of a Prime Minister from Northeast?
Tough question. We haven't had a Prime Minister from Maharashtra, yaar. We have 48 Lok Sabha MPs, Kaushik. We've been waiting for a Prime Minister from Maharashtra. You're asking me from Northeast. It's going to be tough.
26 got one Prime Minister.
That's right. And actually that's the question. I mean, even Morarji Desai was in a way from Gujarat, though he started off as old Bombay state. But who would have thought that a Gujarat Prime Minister and a Gujarat Home Minister would be the two most powerful people in the country? No one would have imagined that even 10 years ago. So life changes very quickly. Who knows? Hemanto Biswa Sarma and Kaushik Deka could be future leaders of this country.
I am a journalist. I will remain a journalist as you are.
No, but I'm just saying you never.
But Northeast has 25 Lok
That's
Sabha
right.
MPs.
And I remember Hemanto telling me that look, this is going to be now an important part, and he crafted NEDA. So you're creating a sort of vote base, and once you do that with 25 MPs, as you put it, or the Trinamool decides it's part of a larger eastern frontier, and it'll have more than 70, 80 in a way MPs. Who knows what tomorrow brings? India is changing faster than we imagine. Nothing remains static in politics and life.
Rajdeep Sardesai, thank you so much for being part of India Today NE. It's an honor for us that you are part of this family also. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Kaushik, as I said, for in a way becoming a window to this world. So thank you.